Welcome back, everyone, to yet another North to South show here presented by Touchdowns to Home Runs, talking some SEC football, everything. And I know I apologize for our show on Monday having to be pre-recorded. It was the long weekend here in Canada, and I had stuff going on, so I decided to do the video. I tried to get it uploaded and premiered on Monday. YouTube was giving me a hard time, so then I had to do that on Tuesday. But that does not mean that we are not back here on Wednesday doing another live show. And today, I only got one segment planned, and I want to do that because I want to let you guys kind of decide what we're going to do and kind of guide the way the show goes and talk about what we're going to talk about today. What I do have planned in store today is which head coach, first-year head coach, should I clarify, which first-year head coach in the SEC, so obviously we're talking Josh Heupel, we're talking Brian Harsin, we're talking Shane Beamer, and we're talking Clark Lea out of Vanderbilt, is set up to have better success in the 2021 season for their first season ever with that program. So we got lots of very interesting stuff to talk about there. But then other than that, if you guys want to drop below in the comment section, just tell me what you guys want to talk about in this video today, and I'll be more than happy to talk about that. So that's why we're kind of going in this video today. So guys, let me know that you're here. And if you are here and you do want to talk about something specific in SEC football, definitely drop a comment down below and we will get to that after this first segment. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and let's go out and have a great show today. So our first segment, I kind of got into it a bit already. We're going to talk about what first-year head coach in the SEC I think is going to have the most success going in and coming out of this 2021 college football season. Now, define success. I could go out and I could pull up the Webster's Dictionary, Oxford Dictionary, whatever you want to do it, and say, oh, success is blah, 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 blah. But to be honest, there is multiple different ways that we could determine success in this scenario. We could look at it wins and loss wise. And I think if we just look wins and loss wise, if we're looking at these four teams, we're looking at Clark Lea and Vanderbilt, we're looking at Shane Beamer at South Carolina, we're looking at Josh Heupel at Tennessee, and we are looking at Brian Harsin at Auburn. What team do I think will have the best record this year out of those four teams? As much as I hate to say it, because you can see I got the Gamecock Block C logo on my shirt, and I got a Gamecocks nice garnet and black jersey behind me. I want to say South Carolina because I'm a fan, but if I had to put money on it, which team I think would come out of those four teams with the best record this season, I'd say Auburn. Now, does that mean that I think Auburn and Brian Harsin will have the most successful season out of every single first-year head coach? No, it depends on where your program is at and the strides taken to make your program more successful. So that's what I want to kind of get into today. I'm going to more focus on Brian Harsin, Josh Heupel, and Shane Beamer. Clark Lea at Vanderbilt, I mean, all in all, I think if they get one SEC win this season, in all honesty, he might have had the most successful first year of head coaching in all the SEC for all these four guys. Like, Vanderbilt is just in that spot. They lose all the games last year. They don't win one game, where if they go out and they're able, maybe not even an SEC win, when they play Stanford this year or something like that, if Vanderbilt's able to knock off even like Missouri or Kentucky or Tennessee or South Carolina or something like that, or Ole Miss, I'd be shocked. And I think that that is a huge improvement for what what Vanderbilt's at right now. So talk about Vanderbilt. Again, I said I'm going to kind of focus more on the other three guys just because Vanderbilt's program is in just such a different spot in terms of the talent on the team, in terms of the national media covering them and everything. So that's why I kind of want to focus more on Auburn, Tennessee, and South Carolina. So what should we start off with? Let's start off with Auburn. I think Auburn has a talented team. I think Auburn has a good team this year. Now, they do come in this season with, many would argue, the toughest schedule in all the SEC. And every single one of these teams is going to have one of the toughest schedules in the nation because you play an SEC slate each and every single season. Now, on top of playing the full SEC West gauntlet and playing Georgia out of the East and South Carolina out of the East, Auburn also goes out to Happy Valley this season to take on the Penn State and Nittany Lions, which will be a hard game going out there, especially if they decide that to be the whiteout game. So Brian Harsin setting up for his first year, obviously just got the big commit in TJ Finley. Still don't know who the quarterback's going to be. I still put my money on Bo Nix up until that Penn State game. After that Penn State game, I said I got TJ Finley starting the rest of the way out. But I think Auburn has some good building blocks around them. I think that they definitely have one of the more talented running back rooms in all the SEC this season. You look at Shivers, and then you obviously look at Tank Bigsby. I think the wide receiver core could use some work, but you got some talented guys out there. I look at Kenyon, and I look at a guy to break out this season, Xavier Capers, over there in the receiving game. And I think this secondary, I think this Auburn defense is highly underrated, and they could go ahead and shock some people this year. I think especially in the secondary, I think they got a lot of talent in there, especially one of my favorite players in all the SEC, not just because of his name, even though his name is sick, Smoke Monday. I think he is a very, very talented player in this Auburn secondary, and I think that they have the building blocks around them to at least put up like a 7-win season this season. Like, looking at the records that I think the other teams will put up, I think if Auburn gets to 7 wins, I think record-wise, they will have the best record of those 4 teams that I'm going to talk about today. I think you have some wins on the board. You have the Alabama State game on the board for you. You're going to have the Georgia State game on the board for you. You're going to have the Akron game on the board for you. You're going to have some SEC games. I think Mississippi State should be a win. I think Arkansas is one of those toss-up games. I think LSU could be a toss-up game. Depends on how LSU comes into the season. Now, let's keep in mind that you do travel to Tiger Stadium for that game. Ole Miss comes home, even though I feel like Ole Miss is a really good team this year. They do have to play in Jordan-Hare. You go to Kyle Field, which will be a bit tougher, and you get Alabama at home, and you play in South Carolina. And then obviously you also have Georgia at home as well. I think that this team is definitely capable of taking home 7 wins. Now, record-wise, do I think that 7 wins means that Brian Harsin will have the most successful start to his tenure at Auburn, more than Josh Heupel at Tennessee, more successful than Shane Beamer at South Carolina, just because he got 7 wins? No, I do not, because that doesn't measure success. Success is how Auburn fans will come out of this season feeling about the future of Auburn football. Let's say you get your 7 wins against Akron, Alabama State. Let's say you go on the road and beat Penn State, you beat Georgia State, you beat Arkansas, Mississippi State, and then South Carolina. But then in the rest of your games, you get run out of town by like LSU, you get run out of town by Georgia, you get run out of town by Texas A&M and Alabama and all those teams. Even though they did beat Penn State on the road, does it really mean anything if this offense still isn't able to go out and score on the road? Let's say that Auburn's defense has a terrific defensive showing in Happy Valley and Penn State, and they're able to win the turnover battle, and they win that game solely one-score game off of their defense. If your offense isn't able to produce in the LSU game, in the Texas A&M game, in the Alabama game, in games like that against Georgia, against Ole Miss, are you really going to be coming out of that game, that season as an Auburn fan, feeling as good or feeling more hopeful than you were going into last season that this Auburn team is going in the right direction? Again, it's just a question. I don't know. Maybe you might be, because you might be like, well, this defense is legit, and if our defense can keep winning us ball games, I think this Auburn team could still be successful. So something that I'm going to look for in Brian Harsin's first season is offensive consistency and consistency at the quarterback position. If he could find his guy and just get him in a situation where you don't have one side of Bo Nix showing up every week and then the other side showing up the next week, where it's such stuff like that. If you can find your consistent guy, whether that be Bo Nix or TJ Finley, and put him in a system that allows him to be consistent week in and week out, I think that that will be major, major improvement, not only for just that quarterback in general, but showing the Auburn fans that whoever comes in at Auburn at QB, we will tailor to his style, and we will go out and make sure that he can play consistent, because I think consistency is something that Auburn fans have really, really been struggling with, because Bo Nix has had some amazing games, but there's been other games that have been terrible for Bo Nix. So it's 50-50. If he can find consistency on this offense, especially at the quarterback position, I think Brian Harsin will be titled as having a very successful season, and Auburn fans will be very, very happy about that. Now let's talk about Tennessee. Tennessee's a confusing team to me because, yes, they just lost a bunch of transfers and everything like that. They've had NCAA problems the last year or so and all that kind of stuff. What do I think that Josh Heupel needs to come into this program and do to make them, quote unquote, successful? I think, again, just the same as Auburn. I think that you could say this about all the teams. Consistency at the quarterback position. I think South Carolina has a good guy at the quarterback position, and it's not like I'm calling out for Luke Doty's head saying He's really good one game and he's totally inconsistent the next game. I think that this is really, really true for Tennessee. Tennessee's got 4 really good guys that they could throw in that quarterback and still have somewhat successful of a season. Now, I think that there are some guys who bring you more success rather than others, and that's just my opinion. But you look at the guys, Hendon Hooker, you look at Brian Maurer, you look at Harrison Bailey, and then you look at Joe Milton coming out of Michigan. I think I really liked Harrison Bailey at a spring ball. I think Hendon Hooker also looked really good in spring ball. And then Joe Milton, we haven't even seen yet. And he had some high hopes at Michigan, so he could do something really good there. I think Tennessee just wants to get back to competitiveness and competing for the SEC East. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen this year. I'm not saying that Tennessee is going to go out, upset Georgia, upset Florida, and then all of a sudden Tennessee's going to go out and win the SEC East. What I'm saying is they did have competitive games against Florida and against Georgia last season. If you can keep playing competitive against those two teams, make competitive games at Alabama, which has been a struggle the last couple of seasons because Alabama's been a really good team and Tennessee just hasn't been able to match that. I'm not saying that it has to be a competitive game throughout, but I think Tennessee fans would really like, let's say for the first 2 quarters, it's only a 1-score game and Tennessee's 1 touchdown away, just 1 fumble, 1 interception, 1 mistake by Alabama away from tying this game up going into halftime. Just something like that to show, okay, we can still hang with the big boys because Tennessee's going to draw on talent no matter what. Is it going to be at Alabama's level each and every single season? I don't know. That depends how Tennessee does in the recruiting game for the next couple of years. But no matter what, Tennessee's always going to have some type of talent in that locker room. It's just how do you use it? How do you coach them up? How competitive are you able to be in these games? So I think that that's something that would make Josh Heupel really successful this season is just getting back to competitiveness and beating teams that you're supposed to beat because Tennessee had some losses last year, losing to teams that they should not have lost to. When you go back, let's say 2 years ago, if you would have told Tennessee fans that they would have lost to that team, you would have thought that they were crazy. So I think Tennessee needs to get back to competitiveness and just winning the games that they're supposed to win. South Carolina. Now, here's the interesting one because this is obviously my favorite team, and I am as high as the moon. If you've been watching all my videos that I've done about the South Carolina Gamecocks on this show, you would know I'm very, very high on Shane Beamer. What does success look like for the Gamecocks? And I think it's kind of the same thing as Tennessee, where I just want to see competitiveness. The last couple seasons, you look at our games against Clemson and you look at our games against Texas A&M, we have been beaten like a rented mule each and every time we go and play those teams the last couple seasons. I'm not saying we have to beat them. I'm not saying this team could win 3 games all year. Like you could win 4 games all year. You could win East Carolina, you could win Troy, you could win Eastern Illinois, and you could win Vanderbilt. I think that those are your 4 wins on the tables. You could lose Kentucky, you could lose Missouri, you could lose Tennessee, you could lose Florida, you could lose Georgia, you could lose Auburn, you could lose Clemson, and you could lose Texas A&M. And as long as we are competitive in those games, I feel like success and strides have been made in this South Carolina program. Because you look back 2 years ago, last season, we only won 2 games. You look back 2 years ago, we only won 4 games. What season was that? 2015, we only won 3 games. 2016, Will Muschamp goes out. Yes, he does make a bowl game his first season, wins 6 games. But does a bowl game really, really measure the success of this team? Does a bowl game really send the message to the rest of the SEC that South Carolina is trending towards the brighter future and South Carolina is trending up? Would you rather get a run out of town against Georgia or play a competitive game against them and lose by, let's say, 7 points or a 1-score game, or let's say even 10 points, something like that, but the game is competitive throughout, and not make a bowl game or make a bowl game and get down against all those teams? I just want to see competitiveness. I want to see some more consistency in the secondary, definitely. I know the secondary is a bit beat up this year. We're weaker. It was a weak spot when it was supposed to be a strength for our team last year. And if you look on paper, you look at the guys that we had in our secondary, it should have definitely been a strength of our team. We just didn't put those guys in positions to have good games and everything like that. So that's what I'm going to look for. I'm going to look offensively. If we could score 30+ points each and every game, I'm not saying against like your good teams, but like if we could go up against a team like Kentucky or Tennessee or your Missouris or something like that, I'd want to score 30 or more points. We're in a new age of college football where it is necessary that you have to be in that 30-plus range against teams like that. And you're not able to go up against your guys like Georgia and Florida and whoever Texas A&M and Clemson, if you cannot score 30-plus points against those other teams. So I think offensive consistency is definitely going to be there. I want to see more consistency in the secondary and just play competitive games. Just play competitive games against your Texas A&Ms, your Clemsons, your Georgias. I'm not saying that we never played a competitive game against Georgia because obviously we beat them just 2 years ago, but Texas A&M and Clemson has been a real struggle. So if I would have to say which guy is better set up for a successful season this year, I think all of them are. I think all of them are in a good spot no matter how you see it. I think all of them are in a good spot to have a better season than the team did last year in terms of not a record-wise, but just looking at the trajectory of the program and which way it's going and the culture built around that and everything, because South Carolina's has already got better. I can tell you that the last couple of months, South Carolina's culture and everything in that locker room, I've already seen huge improvements there. I'm not sure about Auburn. I'm not sure about Tennessee, but all these guys are set up to have a successful season this season in terms of improvements and everything like that. Which guy would I bet probably has the best chance to look the most successful at the end of the season? I'm going to say Auburn probably. I think that Brian Harsin and Auburn have the talent to do something special in the SEC West, and that's not saying that they're going to contend for the West champion. They're not going to go up against Alabama and Texas A&M and knock both of them down. But I think you could see them getting in that third spot. I think that you have a chance to have a big road win against Penn State, and especially if they go out and win that Penn State road game, I think people are going to think really, really highly of Brian Harsin and what Auburn is doing for the next couple seasons. But all in all, what I'm trying to say in this is Josh Heupel, Shane Beamer, and Brian Harsin, I think will all make major improvements for their programs after next season. So that's that segment. So that was that segment, guys. Welcome back. Let me see some questions, and because I said at the beginning I'm gonna kind of let you guys lead your way or lead the way of this show and decide what we're going to talk about for the rest of the show. So I just had that one segment talking about first year head coaches and everything like that. Nate Newman, I like that question. I'll bring that up. Just give me a second. There we go. How do I think Arkansas's defense will do this year? I mean, I think they got definitely the secondary to be good. You look at Catalon, you look at Hudson, Clark, and all those guys. Arkansas's secondary is definitely there. I still got to do a bit more research on their D-line and everything like that, but I think they should hold some ground, especially you're going to have a real test against Texas in week 2, and that's going to be your kind of big, what do you want to call it? Your big deciding game, or just that's what people are going to think about you. Whatever happens in that Texas game, people could go as high as the moon if you're able to really limit Steve Sarkisian in that Texas offense and hold them to, let's say, under 30 points. If you're able to do that, have them in the 20 range or even have them in the 10 range, I think people will think really highly about Arkansas. But if Texas goes up and scores like 30, 40 plus points against Arkansas, I think that that's what people are going to think about Arkansas's defense for the rest of the season. But all in all, I think Arkansas's defense, I think their offense is pretty good, and I think that their defense is pretty good. Again, I said that Arkansas is probably your most underrated team in all the SEC West next season. I'm really excited to see what they have to do next season. I said that they were a bull lock. Which is a very, very hot take, considering that this Arkansas team just a couple years ago, I don't even think won an SEC game. So it's going to be very interesting to watch Arkansas this season. Any other questions? We got Sam Bostic saying, hi, I'm a Kentucky fan. All fans are welcome here. Got some great Kentucky supporters on this channel, even though I said multiple times that sometimes I'm a bit harsh on Kentucky, but Kentucky fans usually appreciate me for admitting that there is some bias there. So all fans are welcome here. Great to have you here, Sam. Great question here from Sam. Great question. I love this. How much do I think Alabama will beat Florida? I've said that I think Alabama will beat Florida. There's still lots to go into. I think I like Talker's pick. I think 21 is around the range that I think it's going to happen. Of course, the lines and everything are going to open. And when I do come out with my initial prediction, again, that we're still way out from that because that is what week 3 of the college football season. We still got 2 weeks to get into in the college football season before we even get to making a somewhat opinion of each of these teams going into that game. But you've just seen Alabama the last couple of years. You see what Florida lost this season, and I know Alabama lost around the same. Alabama lost tons of talent, and it's going to be really, really hard for them to replace. But I think it could be competitive in the beginning where, let's say, Florida gets the ball first, they go down and score. Alabama gets the ball, they go down and score. And let's say you have a 14-14 game at the end of the first quarter or something like that. After that, I think Alabama will start pulling away. You'll see them going at halftime with like a 10-point lead. And I think that when you get to about the fourth quarter, end of third quarter, somewhere around there, that's when I think you're going to see what I think you have there, Talker's Pit, where you're going to see Alabama plus 20 points over Florida or something like that. Again, that's just my opinion on Florida. There's still lots to be decided about both of those teams going in. Like, let's say Alabama loses to Miami week 1, and they just do not look like a good team. Florida could easily go in there, and this game is at home for Florida. They could easily go out and beat Alabama. But again, there's still lots to be talked about both of those teams. Lots. Do I think Florida could win the East? Lots of Florida questions coming in here. Lots of Florida questions. Do I think Florida could win the East? I'm going to say, yeah. I don't want to say that I don't think any teams could win the East. Now, that's obviously saying that, I think Vanderbilt could win and stuff like that, or I think that Tennessee could go out and have some amazing season and win the East. I'm not saying that it can't happen because nothing is impossible, but there obviously are favorites and then there are underdogs. And I think to win the SEC, you're going to have your Georgia as your number 1 team to win the SEC East. At least that is in my opinion. And it looks like a lot of people feel the same way about Georgia really owning this SEC East next season. But I actually did a video last North to South show talking about who do I think is the second best team in the SEC East. And I talked about Florida was definitely up there. And I think Florida right now has to be favorited as the second best team or the second team to be able to win the East this season. I mean, they won the East last season. I think offensively, they're still going to be underrated. You look at all the talent that they lost, where I said in my expectation video for Florida, which I did come out and make one of those, which is a really good video. And if you're a Florida fan, you should go watch that, where I was talking about like how I'm in the middle between what outsiders or what people who aren't Florida fans think, because I'm an outsider too. I'm not a Florida fan, so I can't talk as well about the Florida Gators as, let's say, a Florida fan. But I said I'm in the middle between the outsiders of the Florida football program and the insiders and stuff like that, where the insiders and the Florida fans and everyone like that still thinks that Florida is going to have a really, really successful season this year. They're going to be in double-digit wins. They're going to go to a New Year's Six Bowl, stuff like that, and they're going to win the SEC East. Now, there are some people that think Florida, like non-Florida fans, think that Florida's going to go like get 6 wins or something like that and barely make it to a bowl game and stuff like that. I don't think that it's that extreme on either sides, and I think it's somewhere in the middle where I think that Florida is going to beat the teams that they're supposed to beat and that they're going to lose to the teams that they're supposed to lose to. So that I had them losing to your Georgia. I have them losing to Alabama. I had them losing a toss-up game against LSU. I think that your games against, like, you maybe drop one against Florida. I mean, South Carolina, Missouri, or Kentucky, although I think that they're going to be favored in all 3 of those games, somewhere around there. But I think that they're going to run the table and beat the rest of the schedule out. So do I think that they could win the East? I think 110%. I still think that this offense is really, really good. Emory Jones, I'm excited to see what he has coming into this season. I look at DeMarcus Bowman in the rushing game. Transfer from Clemson, obviously, he's going to be a big impact player at Florida. I'm very excited to see what he can do there because people haven't really seen him. Again, I think pretty sure he's just a freshman last season at Clemson, and then he just transferred over. So we have not really seen DeMarcus Bowman. So lots to look forward to there. And I still think at the receiving game, I feel like a broken record just talking about these guys, but I really like Jacob Copeland. I think that like Gamble is definitely one of the most underrated players on all of that offense. It's just because he's filling in for Kyle Pitts, who went out last season and had an amazing season. I don't think Gamble's going to be at Kyle Pitts' level, but I still think Gamble's going to be a very, very good tight end in the SEC this season. And then you look at the defensive side of the ball, I still think definitely on the D-line that they're definitely there still being able to get to the quarterback. They got a very good D-line. And then I look at the secondary, and you obviously have one of the best corners in the nation in Elam. I think Florida has the talent and has everything to win the East. Are they favored to win the East? No. I still think Georgia on paper right now is the better team. And I still think until I see both teams, until I see something to really sway my opinion, or unless some crazy injury happens for Georgia again, I think that Georgia still will win the East. But is that to say that Florida cannot compete with this Georgia team? And let's say they go into Jacksonville and come out with a win. I still think that that is very possible. So to answer your question there, Nate, I do think that Florida can win the East. I think that they're definitely going to be top favored in the SEC East in the top half, because you're going to have, I'd say right now for favorite, I'd go Georgia, then I go Florida, then I'd probably throw in Kentucky, Missouri, South Carolina, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. That's how I think the rankings would go for how I think that the SEC East will finish out, or how I think who's most probable to be the number one team in the SEC East. But I do think that Florida can win the SEC East. I think that they have the talent. It's all going to come down to Dan Mullen and how this team gets prepared for those big games against Alabama, your big game against Georgia, your big game against LSU, all those games. So lots of exciting stuff to see in Florida this season. So great question there, Nate. College baseball. I love talking college baseball. You see, so I only really got into college baseball this season, and obviously I watched most of the South Carolina games, and I love tuning into some of the other games. So I'm not really like, I know 64 teams and everything like that. I still got to get down in the format and everything, but I do think that there are some really good SEC baseball teams this season. I think Arkansas definitely goes to Omaha. I think Arkansas and Vanderbilt definitely go to Omaha. I think that there's no question about that. I think that I think Mississippi State will still have a good chance. They're a really good team this year. I don't know about Florida, because Florida might be turning a table in this SEC tournament now. I'm not sure. Depends on how the rest of the week goes for them and everything. But other than that, I want to see my Gamecocks do really well. The lineup has just been really struggling for us. Like, we have our top half of guys. Brady Allen's been swinging it really good of late. You got your Wes Clark, you got your like Braylon Wilmer, Josiah Seitler, Andrew Eister, all those guys. But then after that, it kind of just falls off, and that's really killed us this season. And sometimes we have our pitchers going out and throwing their hearts out on the line, and we just can't score for them. So I'd love to make it to Omaha, of course, as a South Carolina fan, but we still got lots of work to be done to be able to do that. So great question. Let's see here. We got Goat commenting. Goat says, who do you think is going to win between LSU and Texas A&M this year? Again, that has lots to do, I think, more with LSU. I think we're going to learn a lot about this LSU team week 1 against UCLA. I just put out my preview video for that, which was very fun to talk about, because that's a game that opened up as less than a field goal favorites for LSU. So we're going to have a lot to tell about LSU going in for the rest of the season after that UCLA game. But right now on paper, I'd say Texas A&M probably wins that game. I can't remember who. I think the game has to be in LSU, because it was just 2 years ago that this jersey was worn against, or coming out of the tunnel against Texas A&M, and that was 1 year ago. So they played in Texas A&M last season. So that game's going to be in LSU, which is obviously not going to be easy. It's going to be rivalry week, last game of the season, or the regular season for both those teams. But right now on paper, still depends on how Haynes King does, but I really like A&M's rushing game. I think that they have the best running back game in all the SEC. I've said that. I think the receiving game is underrated. You got Jalen Weidermeyer, which I'm really excited to see how he does this season. You look at guys like Chris Lane. you got some talent on Texas A&M, and then defensively, Texas A&M is just there. Texas A&M is very there defensively, so very interesting game there. But if I had to say right now, I'm going Texas A&M, even though it is in LSU. Any more questions? Love the questions today, guys. Looks like that is about it. So I will wrap it up here, guys. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, today was kind of a shorter show, but that's because I really wanted to talk to you guys after I wasn't able to make the live show on Monday. So did one planned segment, and then I had some really great questions, especially from Nate, Sam, all you guys, Goat, Talk is Pit. Lots of you guys had good responses. So I really, really appreciate you guys tuning in and the engagement and everything like that. Oh, here we go. We'll finish up from one more with Goat. Who do I think is dark horse candidates for the SEC this season? I think LSU and Ole Miss are. I think LSU, again, is such a boomer bust team. LSU is just a team that can go as high as the moon this season. I think that they have the talent to do something really special this season, but also have the ability to just suck and only win like 3 games this season. So I think that LSU, even though people are kind of in that mid-range for them this season, I think that they could be a dark horse. And Ole Miss, I think offensively, Ole Miss is definitely there, and I have no clue what's going to be made of their defense this season. But if their offense is anything like it was last year and they're able to get some sort of consistency on the defensive side of the ball, again, they probably played outside of Florida the best game against Alabama all last season. So do not count out Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss for that SEC spot if that defense can somewhat turn it around and this offense does not extinguish the fire that they had going last season. So love that question. Love that question. So thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Come back next show, which will be on Monday. And again, even if you have any other questions that you think would be good for next video, I'd love to hear them down below, and I'll definitely considering for them to do that for next show. I think the best versus the rest segment that we got going on for Monday, we are going to do, who are we going to do? Texas A&M Colorado. Texas A&M Colorado. I'm pretty sure that game is being played at the Broncos Stadium, so we got lots of interesting stuff to talk about there with all the elevation and everything like that. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. Like the video, subscribe, comment. Thank you for watching, and come back next time.